So today we'll be talking about the Olympics. And as you guys know, we had the Olympics last summer in Paris. And you probably also know that there will be the next Olympics in Los Angeles in 3 years from now. So that is one of the reasons why we are here, because we wanted to share with you all the good work that has been done in Paris when it comes to cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is always a topic that is very interesting because, as you know, the Olympics is one of the largest sports events. Well, actually it is the largest sports event, and it's also the one that is probably the most attacked in terms of events. So it is also very interesting for us to basically share with you what we have done at the Olympics in Paris, because it's a showcase. Right, so it's an event that we can talk about. We can share some of the insights, some of the secrets. And when it comes to security, it's very challenging to find customers who are willing to share what they have done, because usually people tend to like secrecy when it comes to security. So here, the advantage of the architecture for the Olympics is that we can talk. We can share some details and show you what we have done. So the agenda for the next hour is the following. So I will give you some introduction about the program, what role Cisco has played in the Olympics. And then I'll talk about the architecture, what we have built in terms of the network, in terms of the cybersecurity, and we'll spend most of the time around the cybersecurity. And then I'll go deep down into 4 areas. I mean, Cisco has deployed the full stack of Cisco technologies, but I will be concentrating on 4 areas: network access control. We'll talk about securing internet access. We'll talk about the visibility and the security analytics. And then we'll talk about XDR as well. So those are the kind of 4 main topics for the day. I'll show you what we have built, how those components work together. And then we'll be talking about the Security Operations Center, because we were also involved in the Security Operations Center in Paris, what we have seen, what we have experienced, and then we'll conclude. I will also try to keep some time towards the end for questions, but if you have more questions, you can always go to the WebEx room, ask your questions, and I'll be answering those over the next couple of days. So a few words about myself. So my name is Piotr Jarzynka. I'm a CX Principal Architect. I'm based in France, and I've been leading the cybersecurity architecture for the Olympics. So I work in CX, the Customer Advocacy Department of Cisco. We work with customers, we work with partners, and we provide consultancy, people, human power, advice. We help customers configure, implement, and operate our technologies. I'm an active CCIE as well, CCDE. And here I have 2 pictures that I've picked for you. So the first one is me sitting in a sock in the summer, wearing my official uniform. I'm sorry. And also, I look happy because if you look at the back here, it says 000, which means that there is no incidents. So that's the first picture I've picked up for you. And this is another one that I find also interesting is, you can probably recognize the police guy here. It's the LAPD. So we also had the luxury of having various police come over to Paris to get exposed to the event, to learn, and to also help us in securing the event. The other thing also I want to mention very briefly is I wanted to recognize as well the team that has been working with me. So it was not just me leading the architecture, it was a team effort. So just some of my Cisco colleagues, some of my partners, some of the people from the Olympic Committee, just wanted to recognize them as well in this presentation. So let's look at the Olympics. So as you know, or as you might not know, Cisco has been participating in the Olympics for the last couple of years. I mean, we did Tokyo, we did Rio, we did London. But usually Cisco was always kind of participating and supporting from an infrastructure point of view, providing the switches, the wireless LAN equipment, maybe the collaboration technologies as well. But this time around in Paris, what was new is that Cisco was responsible for providing the cybersecurity technologies. So we have deployed the full Cisco portfolio almost. I mean, almost like 95% of the cybersecurity portfolio has been deployed. And this is something that is new for Cisco. So this is the first time we're securing the Olympics. And as you can imagine, it had to be done properly, right? We had to do all the due diligence, make sure that everything is done accordingly, so that we wouldn't have any incidents during the games, and that there would be no impact on the brand image of Cisco, obviously. The other thing we have done as well in Paris is we have deployed private 5G. So this is also something that was brand new. So we have used private 5G frequencies to transport images from the sailing competition. So images from boats being sent to the shore using private 5G. And this is in collaboration with some of our partners like Orange and Samsung. We have used WebEx for collaboration, for telepresence, and also for IP telephony. And then the other thing that was also brand new in France is that it was a cloud-first model, which meant that all the applications were hosted in the cloud. And the cloud provider was Alibaba Cloud. So that was also a challenge because the Cisco products are not so much tested on Alibaba Cloud. So we had to do more due diligence, we had to do more testing, we had to do some customization as well to make sure that it works nicely within Alibaba Cloud. I mean, what you see here is the architecture that has been built. So it's really a hub and spoke architecture, the spokes being the venues. So when I say venues, it is swimming pools, stadiums, hotels, fan zones, what have you, meeting press centers. Those were the spokes, and then the spokes were connected using the Orange backbone. So Orange is the national telecom operator like AT&T in the US. So all the spokes were connected to the hubs. We had 2 hubs in Paris where we would have access to the internet. And then from the internet, you would have access to Alibaba Cloud, where all the applications were hosted. Now, I'm actually lying to you because we also had a private data center in Paris where we had some application being hosted in Paris. So all the confidential data, all the private and sensitive data was hosted in Paris. All the rest was hosted in Alibaba. And then also what you see here is the OBS network. So the OBS network is the Olympic Broadcasting Service System. It's the network that is used to transport the images to the TV channels, to the broadcasters and the media. So this is really in a nutshell what we have built. The one thing I wanted to add is, if you think about the environment for the Olympics, it's actually very similar to a corporate enterprise environment, right? Hub and spoke, access to the internet, application in a private data center, application in the public cloud, employees, managed devices, unmanaged devices, infrastructure, switches, wireless LAN, internet access, cloud. So it's very similar. So whatever we have done for the Olympics can be extrapolated in any enterprise environment. It's very similar, and what we have done for the Olympics can be applied. So what have we deployed in terms of products and technologies? So as I mentioned previously, we had the 100 venues, so all the sites in France, interconnected using the Orange backbone. We have deployed 2,500 switches. So if you do the math, that is about 25 switches per venue on average. We have deployed 95% of the Cisco cybersecurity portfolio. So that's probably around 15 technologies that we have deployed, and we'll get into the details of that. We have deployed 10,000 access points in other technologies as well, like private 5G, data center, UCS servers, and so on. But really, the focus of this talk is about cybersecurity, and then we'll get into the details. Now, this is also something that I wanted to have a small introduction. This is where I'm coming from. So I'm coming from the customer advocacy department. So we have provided our services to the Olympic Committee and to the partners involved in the project to help them build, design, implement, and also operate during the summer Cisco technologies. So this is very important because we wanted to make sure that whatever is done according to Cisco best practices, industry good practices, and that everything is secured as much as possible. We have also used Talos. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Talos. So Talos is Cisco's security R&D department. So those are the guys working on vulnerabilities. They are the guys writing the IPS signatures. They are the guys providing the threat intelligence into all the products that we have. And they also have services that they can deliver. So I'll talk about that as well in the next few slides. So we have also used Talos to help us in securing and validating that the environment is secured. And then we have the partners as well involved. So Orange, as I mentioned, for the backbone, and then we had two main players. One was Atos. So Atos was responsible for the application and responsible for the desktops. And also we had a company called Evident, which is a sister company of Atos, and they were responsible for the cybersecurity. And then we also had Alibaba as well that was involved, and then other partners as well. So just a few numbers here to give you a feel of what we had to deal with. We had 15,000 athletes that were joining us in France, 100,000 accredited users. So when I say accredited users, it's athletes, volunteers, media, journalists, partners as well. We had 5,000 technical resources working almost 3 years on the project in building all the ecosystem. We had 450 people working in the Technical Operations Center during the summer, covering the different shifts as well. And in the Cybersecurity Operations Center, there was around 50 people. So at every single point in time, there was like 15 or 16 of us in the SOC, but we had to make sure that there was coverage across the different time zones. 200 applications, lots of switches, access point, as we have seen. 130 firewalls we have deployed. So we have deployed like one pair of clusters in every single venue, plus firewalls in the hubs. We'll look at the details. And other things as well. So how did we work with the partners and how did we work with the Olympic Committee? So the Olympic Committee was basically providing us all the requirements. They were working in collaboration with PwC and with the ANSSI. So the ANSSI is the National French Security Agency, so the equivalent of, I guess, the NSA in the US. And they've been providing requirements to the partners in order to deliver a solution to secure the Olympics. So those were the partners that were involved. So Evident was responsible for the cybersecurity, Alibaba for the public cloud, Atos for the applications and the private data center, and then Orange for the network. And Cisco was supporting the partners in providing help, advice, design assistance, implementation assistance, and also during the summer, we were also helping them in operating our solutions during the Olympics. So when it comes to the Olympics, of course, the Olympics is usually a good target, and we were focusing on the main core of the infrastructure, making sure that everything works, of course. When you talk about the Olympics, there's also indirect stakeholders involved, right? So not only the Olympics needs to be secure, but we need to also make sure that all the supporting systems are working, like the energy, the operators, the other cloud providers. So it's very important to have a bit of communication channels between all the kind of stakeholders that are directly involved or indirectly involved. And what we have done is we have established communication channels. So the ANSSI has helped us to basically share threat intelligence amongst all the stakeholders so that everyone would be aware of what is happening in case of incidents. So that was very important. And this was very also important for us to be aware of basically anything that could happen that could indicate that there was an attack happening on one of the systems that was directly or indirectly involved in the Olympics. So when it comes to securing the venue, there's lots of things that we need to consider. Obviously, the first thing we need to consider is the broadcasting, right? The images need to be broadcasted. The timing system needs to work. The Wi-Fi needs to work so that the journalists can upload the pictures. The logistics needs to work. The access control to the stadium needs to work. The shop needs to work as well because people want to buy food, drinks, T-shirts, and so on. And of course, the network and the application needs to be secure. So there's plenty of things to be secured. There is the CCTV system to be secured as well. So lots of challenges in a venue. And one thing we want to do is, of course, that there is no incidents, right? So that's something that we cannot live with is, a broadcasting not being possible, the timing not working, or basically a big incident. So how did we approach the security of the Olympics? So what we have done is we have taken a zero trust model. And what we have done is we have secured the entire end-to-end communication flow from the endpoint across the infrastructure, across the cloud, in the applications. So the whole coverage was done using this three-dimensional model so that the endpoints were secured, the infra was secured, and the application was secured. And for this, we have used all the Cisco technology that we had available to us to provide the best solution possible. When it comes to endpoint, there is plenty of vulnerabilities with endpoints, plenty of threats, risks, right? Users are behind endpoints, so there is potentially lots of risks involved with the endpoints. And what is interesting is that there is not a single product that will secure your endpoints. And what we have done is we have basically built an architecture with multiple products supporting and securing the endpoints. So here what I've shown you is all the products that we have deployed and all the products that have provided some form of security towards the endpoints. I mean, if you think securing the email will secure the endpoints, securing the connection to the internet will secure the endpoints, securing the DNS will secure the endpoints, having an EDR system will secure the endpoints, having visibility of what the user is doing on the network will secure the endpoint. So it's all about an architecture play, and this is really the key message that I want to convey, is that today security is not about one product, two products, it's an architecture play. Multiple products working together, sharing data, sharing context, being automated, being orchestrated, providing detection mechanism, but also responses automatically. So this is what we have done. And what I'm highlighting here in blue is what I think is the core components that we had. Those are the core components that have provided the security protection for the endpoints, but also for the infrastructure. And the same principle applies for the infrastructure. Lots of vulnerabilities, lots of threats, lots of risks. And same principle, not a single product, an architecture play. Right? Same thing, you think about firewalls to segment, to protect your infrastructure. You have DDoS protection that will also protect your infrastructure. You have visibility, so you see what is happening on the infrastructure. You measure the quality of service on your infrastructure. That also gives you some indication of being attacked or not. So it's all about an architecture play. And again, the core components are the ones we'll be talking in the next few slides. And then if I move to the application side of things, the same thing applies. Lots of risks, lots of vulnerabilities, lots of threats. And the way it's being addressed is by an architecture of multiple capabilities working together. And you see, again, there is the same kind of core products that are providing the kind of the baseline of the security architecture that we have built. We'll get into the details in the next few slides. So I mentioned Talos previously in my introduction. So Talos has been providing us services. So the first thing they have done is they have provided us with threat intelligence. So what is threat intelligence? So we had a team of security analysts working like almost 6 months before the Olympics, and they were spending the time surfing the web, surfing the dark web, reading hacking forums, reading social media, reading Telegram groups, and providing us with proactive intelligence. What was being organized, what was being discussed, what was being planned. So the idea was for us to be proactively aware of what would be potentially happening so that we would be prepared and that would be potentially also get organized if something would be happening. So this is the threat intelligence. Also, what is important is that the threat intelligence has been shared as well. So whatever we learned from Talos, we also shared it with all the stakeholders to make sure that everyone was aware of all the risks and all the threats that were potentially happening out there. The other thing Talos has done as well is they have performed a compromise assessment, or actually multiple compromise assessments. So the idea here is for them to come before the beginning of the games and to baseline the infrastructure or the environment to make sure that nothing has been compromised before the beginning of the games. Right? The last thing you want is to start with something that is already bad. So they have done as well compromise assessments. And then the other thing they have done as well is we also had security analysts, incident responders from Talos sitting with us in the SOC in Paris. and they were basically available to work with us in case of any major incidents. And they would be interfacing with governmental agencies. They would be doing all the professional due diligence in capturing the forensics and helping us in managing any security incidents that could be happening, any major security incident. And of course, if nothing was happening, then those people would be spending their time threat hunting. So they would be looking at logs, scanning the network, trying to see if there is anything suspicious being seen. So basically, doing the threat hunting as much as possible on the ecosystem. So let's move to the architecture now. So I mentioned the word zero trust. And what I've done here is I've taken all the capabilities that we have deployed, and I have mapped them against the zero trust framework. So we have a 10 pillars zero trust framework. And what I wanted to show you is that we have coverage in all the boxes. Right? And this was very important for us to have coverage everywhere. So I have put the products in the right boxes. You could, of course, argue and discuss, or maybe this one should be in multiple boxes, or it should be in that box versus that one. But the message here was really to show you that we have coverage everywhere. And also the message that I wanted to convey is that the ones in green are probably the most important ones. So the enforcement, the monitoring and the visibility, and then the automation. I think those three areas, or those three pillars, were the key of the success of the Olympics. And we'll get into the details. So the architecture was built with the zero trust framework in mind. And then the other thing that is important is we have also taken the decision of enabling visibility to the maximum of what we could. So when I say visibility, is getting all the telemetry from everywhere so that we would know exactly what is happening. We could also always go back in time and always have the information and the view of what is happening on the ecosystem. So for this, what we have done is we have ingested all the net flow from all the switches, well, actually all the access switches. So there was 2,500 switches deployed. So probably 2,400 switches were sending net flow to us that was being ingested. We have also ingested all the wireless LAN controllers traffic. So we would have full visibility of the wired traffic and the wireless traffic. We have also ingested all the traffic from the firewalls. So all the NCell has been ingested. We have also ingested all the flows from the Alibaba cloud and the private cloud as well. So we would have full visibility as well end to end. On top of that, we have also captured all the flows from the managed devices. We have used the Cisco secure client with the NVM module, network visibility module, to also get all the data. We have also captured and ingested all the identity telemetry as well, using Cisco Identity Intelligence. And we also had visibility of the email systems, right? All the flows and all the traffic going in and out through the email systems. And all of that was centralized using Cisco XDR. So Cisco XDR has been the main platform for us, the centralized platform to basically control all the capabilities that we had, but also ingest the telemetry and provide all the security functions in the architecture. We'll get into the details in the next few slides. So the first thing I wanted to do is to give you a bit of insight about the network connectivity. So as I mentioned previously, we had two POPs in Paris. Those were built by Orange. And those two POPs were connected to the internet. We had multiple pairs of firewalls, 40 gig connections to the internet. One pair of firewall was used for remote access VPN. One cluster was used for remote connections to partners using IPsec. We used Catalyst Center to help the deployment and to manage the deployment of all the switches and the wireless LAN controllers. We have deployed ICE as well to perform the access control on the Wi-Fi and on the wired network. And the two POPs were connected to the internet, obviously, where we could be accessing the data in the private data center and in Alibaba Cloud in the private cloud. And then what you had is all the venues, so the 100 venues, interconnected using the Orange backbone. And there what we had is a pair of firewalls to segment the competition network from the rest of the network. We had, of course, different VRFs, different VLANs, different segments in the venues. We have used catalyst switches, wireless LAN controllers, and so on. So this is the kind of the network environment. And if we look now at the cybersecurity environment, so here what you see is the POPs that I've just shown previously, the POPs provided by Orange. And what we have deployed in the Orange POP is a cluster of secure network analytics. So that was the solution that was used to ingest all the telemetry from the network, from the firewalls, from the wireless LAN controllers. So this was using secure network analytics. Previously, it used to be called StealthWatch. That's the acquisition that we made a couple of years ago. And then in the venues, you had two types of user populations. You had the managed devices, so that would be the employees using a managed device. That managed device would be using the secure client with the umbrella module, which meant that all DNS traffic would be inspected by umbrella DNS, and all traffic towards the internet would be tunneled to the Cisco data center, where it would be inspected for security, content, DLP, and malware, and so on. So that's what we have done for the managed devices. And also, we had also two EDR systems running on the managed devices. One was Defender from Microsoft, and the other one was CrowdStrike. You might ask the question, why didn't you guys use any Cisco EDR solution there? It was basically because the Olympic Committee had already engagements and commercial agreements with those two vendors, and we were excluded from that category. So that is the reason why we didn't use Cisco EDR, but we could have used Cisco EDR solution as well if it was needed. Now, the fact that we have used CrowdStrike and Defender wasn't an issue because we had full support for those two solutions, and we could integrate very easily with them, and we could reuse as well all the data, context data, telemetry as well from those two EDR systems. And then the other type of users were the accredited users. So those were journalists, athletes, volunteers, and they would be using unmanaged devices. So the managed devices, they were authenticated using PIP-TLS, .1x PIP-TLS. The unmanaged ones, the accredited ones, they were using either MAB or they were using a captive portal to access the internet and access the application if they had to access any applications. And then in the data centers or in the private and public clouds, we used the Cisco DDoS solution and the Cisco WAF, which are solutions OEM from Radware to protect the clouds. We're using cloud analytics to ingest all the flows from Alibaba, also to ingest all the flows from the private cloud and from the users. We have used Kenna to help us manage the vulnerabilities of the servers and the endpoints. We have used Duo for MFA. We have used Panoptica to help us secure some of the CI/CD pipelines. We have used identity intelligence to secure the identities and to secure the behavior of users across the multiple IDPs that we had. And then in the Cisco SaaS, we had Umbrella DNS with Umbrella SIG, which is a secure internet gateway. We have used cloud email security, domain security, and malware analytics, which was our centralized sandboxing solution. So you see there is lots of security products and capabilities here. And of course, we had to find a way to integrate all of them all together, to make them work together, and we used XDR to achieve that function. So we'll spend some time on XDR in the next few slides, and you will see how XDR has been used in the CyberSOC. But before we go to XDR, we'll talk about network access control. I think it's a topic that everyone is very familiar with. Just very briefly, I'll give you an overview of what we have done. So ICE, which is Identity Services Engine, has been used to perform various functions, obviously to authenticate the devices on the network, either using .1x or MAB or the captive portal. We have used ICE to segment as well. So once we have authenticated the devices, we could segment them, put them into a different VRF, different VLAN. We have also used ICE to use IPSKs for the Wi-Fi access, so that each partner would have a unique identifying private shared key for Wi-Fi. The other thing that is quite interesting is we have used as well interface templates. So in order for us to have a very standardized config on the switches, we have used interface templates so that we could basically, when there was a need to, for instance, in some of the villages, we had to put micro switches into the bedrooms of the athletes. So we didn't know where to plug those switches. So what we did is we authenticated the little micro switches using ICE, and then we pushed a config, interface template config on the switch, and it would reconfigure the switch from an access port to a trunk port. So we could dynamically plug those micro switches in the bedrooms of the athletes, and then it would automatically reconfigure them into trunk ports so that they could have multiple ports. The other thing ICE was used for is to provide profiling. So we were learning as well what type of devices were connected to the network. And this is something that was useful because we have done something called a quarantine, automatic quarantine function. And I'll talk about that in the next few slides. And the other thing I forgot to mention is we have integrated ICE as well with secure network analytics. Because when you receive the net flow from the network, you only get IP addresses, ports, number of packets, number of bytes. But if you integrate secure network analytics with ICE, you also get the user identity, and you also get the MAC address. So you have a full view of what is happening on your environment. And then we have done as well the quarantining, which I'll explain in the next few slides. So this is a picture of the captive portal. This, again, was only providing access to the internet, because you could argue and say, yeah, but this is not secure, it's username and password based. On the other hand, it only provided access to the internet. So it was okay. So in terms of the ICE architecture, what we have done is we have built a large cluster with dual management systems, dual PANs, dual monitoring systems. We had 2 PX grid nodes as well to interface ICE with the external components and to also integrate ICE with XDR, which we'll see in the next few slides. We had dedicated 2 nodes for TAC access, and then we had 6 nodes to do the .1x and to do the captive portal access control on the environment. We had a load balancer as well, and then the load was spread across the 6 nodes taking the traffic. So in terms of the volume that we have seen, I mean, we have seen up to 240,000 endpoints towards the end of the summer, and the peaks were around 55,000 per day. And of course, everything was fine. We had no issues in performance, and so on. So now let's look at internet access. And I'll be talking about Umbrella. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar about Umbrella. I mean, Umbrella is also going to be evolving into Cisco Secure Access, which is the new kind of architecture that is being built. But last year, we didn't have Cisco Secure Access, so we had to work with Umbrella, which is building the foundation of Cisco Secure Access anyway. So Umbrella provides multiple protection levels. The first one, what it does is it secures your DNS requests, which means that whatever DNS request is sent to Umbrella, we validate that this request is valid, right? So if it's a known malicious website, we'll block it. If it's categorized in a specific category, like porn, it would be blocked as well. So we secure at DNS level, but also we also have the functionality of securing web traffic. So the managed devices were also tunneled all the way to Umbrella, and then they would be secured and also controlled of what they could do. We had other function, more advanced function like DLP as well. So we would also inspect the traffic of the managed devices. All that traffic will be, by the way, decrypted, because otherwise we couldn't inspect it. And we have used Umbrella for 2 things. So in the venues, we have integrated Umbrella with Efficient IP. So Efficient IP have a direct connector to Umbrella. So all the traffic from the venues were going to Efficient IP, and then Efficient IP was relaying the traffic to Umbrella. This was for DNS. And then for managed devices, basically they were establishing a tunnel all the way, an SSL tunnel all the way to Umbrella, and then the traffic was actually exiting from the Cisco data center. And we had one in Paris and one in Marseille in the south of France. For Alibaba, what we have done is we have installed a virtual appliance, an Umbrella virtual appliance. We call it VA, virtual appliance, which was running in Alibaba Cloud. And that virtual appliance was inspecting all DNS requests coming from the cloud and also controlling what is allowed, what is not allowed. So that way we would control and monitor a bit what is going out of the servers in Alibaba. The next one is visibility and security analytics. And I think for me, this is probably the most important one, or the second most important one, depending on how you look at it. There is two things that we have used. So we have used network security analytics and cloud security analytics. And we have ingested all the telemetry from the network, all the telemetry from the cloud, and all the telemetry from the endpoints, at least the managed one. That way we had full visibility, but also what is most important is that we could also inspect the traffic, right? Because if someone was, I'll give you a simple example. If someone is scanning the network, you will get multiple flows, right? One flow per IP address. So you can immediately see that someone is scanning the network just by looking at the net flow. You can also baseline the traffic, right? So you will see pattern happening. Maybe there's more activity during the day, less in the evening. And the system will learn about that, and then will generate alerts and incidents. So there is also some kind of machine learning in there. Now, the challenge that we have with the Olympics is that nothing is happening until the beginning of the games, and then suddenly everything is happening during 6 weeks, and then it stops. So usually you need a bit of history to basically do the baselining of your traffic. So for an Olympic environment, it took a few days to learn and to baseline the traffic. But usually in an enterprise network, it's much easier because you have the legacy and you have the history of your traffic. And also what was very important is that it was used for forensics. So we could always go back in time at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, this IP address, this switch, this location, and have full visibility of what was the traffic flows, what was happening in the environment. So for network analytics, what we have done is we have built a cluster in Paris in the hub. We deployed 3 collectors, and what we have done is dedicated one collector for the wired network, one collector for the wireless, and then the last one was for the firewalls. All the data was ingested and then stored in the database systems. And then we had the managers basically running queries on the data, trying to detect if there is any malicious behaviors, malicious traffic being seen. The manager was integrated with ICE, as I mentioned previously. It was also talking to the cloud to get any cognitive intelligence as well, to be more clever as well. And then the incidents and the alerts were being sent to Cisco XDR. So this is for the network infrastructure. And then for the cloud infrastructure, it's slightly different because for the network, it's a push model. And for the cloud, it's a pull model. So Secure Cloud Analytics was doing API calls towards Alibaba to get the flows, the VPC flows coming in and out of the cloud. And for the private cloud, we're using the Cisco telemetry broker. We had a VMware stack, compute stack, that was sending the net flow to CTB, Cisco telemetry broker. The Cisco telemetry broker was encrypting, compressing the data, and then sending it to Secure Cloud Analytics. And then last and not least, we were also ingesting the NVM traffic from the managed devices. So all of that was going to Secure Cloud Analytics and was then fed into XDR for incidents. So XDR. So XDR is Cisco Extended Detection and Response Platform. It's a solution that is cloud-based that allows us to integrate all Cisco security capabilities, but we also integrate with third-party capabilities like CrowdStrike and Defender and others. It's also capable of ingesting telemetry because we were using Cisco Cloud Analytics, which is in fact the data lake of XDR. And that system then allows you to basically generate incidents because it has visibility on the entire ecosystem. So we have used XDR very intensively, and we have used it in the SOC. Right. So here's a picture of all the things we have integrated into Cisco XDR. So obviously you have all the Cisco products being integrated and fed into Cisco XDR, but we have also integrated third-party products. Right? I mentioned CrowdStrike, Defender, Alibaba. We also integrated Threat Caution, which is our threat intelligence platform, into XDR. Intune, Active Directory, all of that was integrated into XDR. And also what you see here in blue is also some direct product integration. So I mentioned previously that network analytics was talking to ICE. This is something that was done directly without going through a Cisco XDR. So you can see that already here, given that we had so many capabilities, so many technologies to be managed, it was very important to have a single pane of glass, right? Single pane of control, single pane of glass. And XDR has provided exactly that value for us, being able to get the data of all those products into one single place, get the contextual data into one single place, and we used XDR for multiple things. So the first thing we have used it for is, of course, the integration of all those products, the enrichment of the data coming from various sources. We have used it for the dashboards as well. So XDR was used in the SOC, and we're displaying the statistics of the products. We have used XDR to perform threat hunting as well. So this is something that was used by the security analyst to perform threat hunting. So if you were investigating, I don't know, an IP address, for instance, you would go into XDR, you would type the IP address, and then it would go out and speak to the 20 products that we had to get any contextual data. The contextual data will come back, and then it would be displayed in a graph with a timing as well. So you could see where that IP address was seen, by what system, what were the communication flow, and then it would help you in an investigation. We have used XDR as well to manage the secure client. So everything was based on XDR. So all the management, all the software updates were basically, the profiles were basically pushed by XDR. We have integrated XDR with all the MDM systems that we had. So we had Intune, Jamf, and also all the EDR systems, CrowdStrike Defender. We have also integrated XDR with Active Directory, which meant that we had full visibility of all the users and all the devices that were basically used in the environment. And of course, we have used XDR to automate actions. Given that we had so many technologies involved in the cybersecurity, we had to have a way to take actions in real time, right? I mean, imagine if you have to log in to 20 GUIs to make any changes, that was not possible. So we had to have a way to be very quick, to be able to blacklist, for example, an IP address, blacklist a user, disconnect a device very quickly. So I'll take the example of the IP address. I mean, if you need to blacklist an IP address, well, you can blacklist on the firewalls, you can blacklist it on the WAF, you can blacklist it on the email system, you can blacklist in Umbrella, you can blacklist it on the EDR. So already 5 systems you need to touch, right? So it was very important for us to have workflows so that we could take actions immediately and respond immediately to any risks or any threats that we would see on the environment. And then the last thing that I mentioned here is the automated actions that we have done. So we have also used XDR to basically take actions automatically on the environment so that it would automatically quarantine users. So if we would detect someone who has been compromised, we would automatically quarantine it. I'll explain that in the next few slides. So this is a picture taken for the SOC. So as you can see, XDR is the 2 main screens in the SOC. So one of the screens was showing all the statistics from all the 20 products that we had. So the screen was refreshing and was displaying all the statistics and the data from the 20 products that we had. All those dashboards can be customized. So you can basically customize it to your needs. And then on the right-hand side, you have the incidents being shown in XDR. So incidents would be incidents that XDR has correlated from the 20 sources that it has seen, right? So it would be like kind of more advanced incidents that you would have been alerted on. And then what we had is a ticketing system here where we would have the incident being shown. Here, this was the planning of the games during the day. And then we had the 2 screens as well to keep an eye on the broadcasting, make sure that broadcasting works, make sure that the scoring works, and so on. So I mentioned the dashboards. So this is an example. I mean, this is actually coming from Paris. So this is basically the statistics that you can display. You can customize it as you like. You can change the colors, change the graph types, and so on. So this was very important for us because we had full visibility of what was happening in the environment. This one here is the threat hunting. So this is where the system would go out and ask for contextual data from all the 20 capabilities that you have in your system and then show you it as a graph with the timelines. So you could click and then see exactly who has spoken to whom, at what point in time, and where it has been seen. Very useful for threat hunting. Device inside is where we have integrated XDR with all the MDM systems and also the EDR systems. So we would have full visibility of the devices. So for instance, this is, if I'm not mistaken, a device, and the device has been seen by Umbrella, by CrowdStrike, by Defender, by Intune, and by Secure Client. So if you click on the device, then you get more details, you get all the versions of software running on the machine, all the libraries, and so on. But what is important is that, we had device types, the device data, and the user data as well in XDR. So when you do an investigation, you would have full visibility end-to-end. The workflows, I've given you the example of the blacklisting of IP addresses. So we had 450 workflows being executed every day. I think in total we had 140 workflows that were created to help us during the Olympics. And then the other thing also I mentioned is the automatic quarantining that we have done. So here, as you remember, we had two types of devices, the managed devices and the unmanaged devices. The managed devices, it was easy to work with them because they were managed, so we could very easily intercept them, block them, or fix them. But the unmanaged devices, we had no control. I mean, those were journalists, volunteers, athletes. But what we have decided to do with the Olympic Committee is to do some kind of automatic remediation. And the challenge we had is that we could not disconnect the devices because those were journalists, and you don't want to disconnect journalists. So what we decided to do and what we managed to do is to display a message to those devices. So if XDR would detect that there was a command and control channel being seen, so this was something detected by Umbrella. So if Umbrella would detect that one of the machines was communicating to a known command and control IP address on the internet, what we would do is XDR would send a message to a proxy that would then send a message to ICE, and ICE would then push an access list onto the switchboard or the wireless LAN controller. And what we would do is we would trigger the hotspot detection on the machine. We would intercept as well the hotspot through a URL redirection, and we would display a message to the user saying, your machine has been compromised. Please go and speak to local IT support to have it fixed. And that message will be basically displayed for 10 minutes, and then we will remove it, wait again, and then put it again if it was seen again. So we managed to inform the users by using a trick, using the hotspot captive portal operating system detection system. And this was all automated, and it has been run a few times, more than 100 times actually. It was run during the summer, and all automated without any user intervention. So the beauty really is that you can automate various actions and responses. Right? And the more systems you have, the more flexibility you have, and the more options you have for displaying messages, intercepting traffic, redirecting traffic, blocking traffic, quarantining, putting them into different VLANs, and so on. One thing we have done as well is we have integrated XDR into a WebEx bot. So that meant that super admins could issue commands in a WebEx space, and then XDR would basically run the workflows and take the actions. So that meant that the super admins could basically work from anywhere. They could be in a restaurant and they could take actions and immediately protect the environment within a few commands. The other thing that has been done as well is there has been a web server that has been also created that would also be interfaced with XDR. The reason why we have created a web server is because the challenge we have with WebEx is that once you are in the room, you have access to all the commands. So it was fine for the super admins, but if we wanted to be in the zero trust model, we had to restrict as much as possible the commands that security analysts could issue. And that's the reason why we have created a web server, so that we could have a very strict role-based access control and limit what security analysts can do. So not everyone would have full access to all the commands and all the actions. Let's talk about the Cisco, the Cybersecurity Operations Center, and also I'll share with you some of the things we have seen during the summer. So the Cybersecurity Operations Center was isolated from the Technical Operations Center, so we were put in a separate room to keep everything separate and confidential. There was 15 seats in the cybersecurity SOC. Cisco had 3 engineers working in the SOC. I was there for a couple of days as well. And then we had all the stakeholders working with us in the CyberSOC. We had, of course, the national French agency that was there, and then the main players and partners were also there. We had Talos, as I mentioned previously. That was one of the seats. And then we had a security expert and a network security expert to work in conjunction with the partners. So one of the questions that you might have at the top of your head is, what have you guys seen in terms of incidents, in terms of events? How many billions, millions you have seen? We have seen billions of events, for sure. The challenge is, when we talk about billions, it doesn't mean much, right? I mean, what is a security event? Maybe it's a user mistyping a password. Yeah, it's a security event. Maybe it's 2, actually. Maybe you could have 2 alerts for a single event. Does it really matter? Probably not. Right. Also, how do you account for the events? I mean, do you account like 6 months before the Olympics? Do you take into account the Paralympics? So throwing numbers doesn't make any sense. What is important is how many incidents we had that had an impact on the Olympics. I think that is more kind of meaningful, because throwing up billions of events doesn't mean much. And this is also what the Olympic Committee was also kind of preaching, is that let's focus on real incidents and not so much on alerts and events, because it's not meaningful. So we have seen 850 incidents. Some of them were high incidents, high severity incidents. But what is important to mention is that none of them impacted the games, right? So we had no impact on the games. And that is really the key message here, is that, yeah, the games were successful, and we are very happy about the outcome. I have also put some statistics here for you to show you how much we have seen in terms of traffic flows, in terms of how many records we have ingested of net flow and so on. I'll let you guys review this at your leisure. So, what have we seen during the summer? So the first thing we have experienced is the CrowdStrike incident. And I'm sure many of you have also been faced with that issue. We didn't know, I mean, this is something that happened 1 week before the Olympics, and we didn't know if it was a cybersecurity incident or not, right? So everyone was panicking, because we were seeing that traffic was being dropped, right? So what you see here at the bottom is, statistics from XDR. So of course we had people calling us, and the operators were reporting that there was applications not being reachable and so on. But also our tools were also seeing that something was being dropped, right? So on the 19th of July, we saw basically a drop in traffic coming from the Alibaba cloud. So we couldn't have prevented this issue from happening, but we had visibility. And that's why I mentioned that visibility is very important, because you can keep an eye on what's happening, and you can also help the situation to be recovered, right? So we can also monitor and see when the traffic levels are back to normal. So for us, it had a big impact, because we had to basically go out and fix all the laptops one by one. So engineers had to go with a USB bootable USB key, boot the machine, disable disk encryption, delete the file, and then reboot the machine. So it took us probably more than a week to do so. And then we also had to recover all the servers running in Alibaba. Right. So this was kind of quicker to recover, because it was all virtual. So we could very quickly connect and then do all the cleaning up of the service. So that's the first thing that impacted us. The second thing also that we were kind of hit with is, on the first day of the opening ceremony, there has been an incident on the rail tracks. And again, we didn't know if it was a cybersecurity attack or if it was something else. At the end of the day, it wasn't a cybersecurity incident. It was a sabotage that was done on the signaling optical fibers of the rail tracks. So people have put fire on some of the fibers that were used for signaling, and some of the trains were blocked for a few hours between, the various areas of France. but that didn't impact us. DDoS, we had, of course, DDoS attacks, and we had DDoS protections as well. So we had DDoS from Alibaba, we had DDoS from Radware protecting us. So that didn't impact us so much because we had the solutions in place. This is something I've added as well. Where did the DDoS attack came from? So funny enough, most of the attacks were originating from the UK. But again, it doesn't mean much because maybe the attackers were using infrastructure in the UK, or maybe they were using bots being controlled from the UK. But it was just an interesting statistic to share. Yeah, so number one was UK, and then it was Ireland and USA being third. Phishing campaigns. So this is something that was targeted against the employees. So lots of phishing campaigns trying to steal the employees' credentials. So here is an example of a competition or a raffle being organized and then asking users to click on a website where they will be trying to gather the credentials for the users. And the other thing that was quite interesting is also we've been also targeted by SMS phishing attacks. So this is also something new. And we didn't have much visibility on the SMS side of things. Email was easy because everything was going through our email gateways, but SMS was a bit out of band. And that is definitely something to consider for the next Olympics, how we can secure the SMS communication, or at least inspect the SMS communications. DNS abuse. So, of course, we had lots of fake DNS entries being created, lots of fake websites pretending to be reselling or selling Olympic tickets. So those guys were trying to steal credit cards. They were stealing credit cards detail. They were also buying Google ads, so that if you would do a Google search on Olympic tickets, you would get it very high in the list. And for us, it was very easy to spot because, Talos was, of course, looking for all those newly registered websites, all keywords that were related to the Olympics, like Paris, Olympics, tickets, competition. So it was very easy to spot them. And what we have done, of course, is we have shared the threat intelligence. So everything was going into threat caution, and then threat caution was spreading this to all the ecosystem. So here is an example of Umbrella being integrated with threat caution, and then all the domain names will be already injected into Umbrella so that all the domains will be blocked at DNS layer immediately. I mentioned threat intelligence, so this is also an example of the sort of proactive intelligence that we were getting. Some of it was, of course, bluff, but at least we were aware of what was being organized, what was being discussed, what was being prepared, so that we would be, more prepared in case things would happen. So what did we learn by securing the Olympics? I mean, the first thing we have learned is that a zero trust approach works, right? So it's all about having full coverage across the entire zero trust framework with capabilities. What is important as well is making all those capabilities work together. Get the contextual data from all those capabilities, share the data, share the threat intelligence, automate actions, orchestrate actions, have a single pane of glass. I mean, this is what works today. Not a single product, an architectural play. And this is very important as well because we want to reduce false positive, right? So if we have data that is already correlated, contextualized, then there will be less false positives. Also, what is very important is to integrate the network with the cybersecurity. Yeah, so we have seen that we have basically taken some automated actions between the network and the cybersecurity. We have taken all the telemetry from the network as well. This is also very important. And it works. It works. It helps you. The other thing also I mentioned here is the human kind of aspects, right? So security is a technology, but you need to have humans, people behind it that know how to use it. Because it's not just about putting a tool and just letting it run. You need to have people that know how to use it, right? So services are very important to get the right capabilities, the right skills, to complement your engineers, to complement your security analysts. And then the last thing as well that is very important is the human element. The weakest link is usually the user. So it's very important to educate your users, to explain to them that they shouldn't be clicking on any link that they get. They need to be careful about data that they receive, the requests that they receive. And we have done lots of training as well, right? Lots of training of all the employees to make sure that they are aware of all the risk that they could be faced with. So that is the last slide from my side. I have one more slide that I wanted to share with you. So this is a picture of France, Régul, who was the former CISO of the Olympics. And we have the pleasure of having him today as well in the room. And he made a bet with the entire team that if everything goes well during the Olympics, he would dye his hair gold. So this is really the best customer reference that we could have. And then last and not least, in 4 years from now, well, actually in 3 years from now, you guys will have the LA Olympics. Some of you will be involved, probably directly or indirectly. So we're also doing lots of knowledge transfer based on what we have experienced in France, so that you guys have a head start, that you guys build on top of what we have done. And we are also involved in the Olympics. Cisco is also participating in the Olympics. I mean, we still have 3 years to go. But if you consider what we have done with Paris, I mean, Paris started almost like 4 years before the Olympics, right? So it takes time to organize the Olympics. Make sure you do your surveys. Good luck with the rest of the Cisco Live, and thank you very much.